Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Kulchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
It's Dave here. This is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile. It's the podcast where we walk home from the movies. We're going to see a movie. And Kathy, I don't want you to worry, darling. Because we're going to see that movie that has all the controversies around.
I don't know. Everyone's asking, literally, everyone's saying to us, when are you going to see Don't Worry, Darling?
This movie could not have gotten more buzz for itself.
So much publicity.
Without having any of it to do with the actual movie.
I know, because I actually only started watching the trailer for the movie and we turned it off because it felt like it was showing too much.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, of course, I've seen Harry Styles spitting on Chris Pine's lap.
I mean, so much stuff happened. But before we even got to Harry Styles allegedly spitting on Chris Pine, we had all the Shia LaBeouf stuff, or Shia LaBeouf, or whatever you say. Then there was an Olivia Wilde and Florence Pugh spat.
Supposed.
Not that kind of spat.
Alleged.
Alleged.
And Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles obviously getting together on the set of the movie.
No, Florence Pugh and Harry Styles, right?
Oh, Olivia Wilde.
Oh, it's
and Harry
Olivia
Styles.
Wilde and Harry Styles are together. Oh, right.
But anyway, all of that, I recommend our listeners go and read an article that Terry White wrote for her own newsletter. If you just Google Terry White and I'm Sorry Darling and Olivia Wilde, you'll read a fantastic article about the sexism that Olivia Wilde has faced as a female director. So I recommend people go and read that. It's really interesting. Kind of one of the main takeaways for me is that Olivia Wilde made Booksmart, which we reviewed a couple of years ago on this podcast. We were both huge fans of. Fantastic film, right? It's traditionally extremely difficult for female filmmakers to get to make a second movie. There's loads of barriers to it. She has made a second movie. Now she's facing all sorts of sexist vitriol. So we shouldn't focus on any of that. I think we should just go in focusing on the movie.
I'm not even aware of that.
It's by the writer or one of the writers who worked on Booksmart, so that interests me.
Yes. Janie Silberman, I think.
And actual Van Dykes.
Yes, two Van Dykes.
Yeah.
Two Van Dykes did the story.
I can't believe there's Van Dykes.
From the IMDb. Yes,
So,
Katie Silberman is the screenwriter.
We're obviously huge Florence Pugh fans in this podcast.
Florence Pugh is amazing.
Love her.
Harry Styles, I think I've only ever seen him in Dunkirk.
And he was good in Dunkirk, wasn't he?
He was pretty good, yeah.
I'm very interested to see him on screen. I think he's extremely famous, and I think,
do you think?
That makes it very interesting to watch someone who's very famous for not acting.
Yeah, because
so
that is potentially distracting. Can we go this way?
Yeah, exactly. So all that being said, from the brief bit of the trailer that I watched before I turned it off, I thought it looked class.
Yeah, I think it looks like my type of vibe, a sort of a mystery box, what's going on, sort of Lost kind of vibe with a sort of 60s air test pilot aesthetic, right? And I'm on board with all of that.
Yeah, and that was from 20 seconds of the trailer.
Yeah. So I guess, we're here now. Will we head in and we'll see you guys on the other side?
Yeah.
Bye.
All of you wives. We men, we ask a lot. We ask for strength, food at home, a house cleaned, and discretion above all else.
Boys and their toys. At least we know they're getting work done. Welcome to the Victory Project. We're all here because we believe in the mission.
What are we doing?
Changing the world.
What are we doing?
Changing the world.
That's right.
What do you think they're really doing out there?
What do you mean? The one thing they ask of us is to stay here. Where it's safe.
Do you even know what the Victory Project actually is? Have you ever asked?
Do you?
Please. What's actually happening?
Stop it, Alice.
What if this place is dangerous? What if...
No. Jack, it's okay. I'm curious to hear where she's going with this.
Okay, hi, welcome back. We've just seen Don't Worry Darling. If it's your first time on the Cinemile here, we won't spoil the movie yet until obviously we turn onto Spoiler Street, which is about halfway home from our walk.
Yes.
Normally. So Kathy, general thoughts, what do you think about Don't Worry Darling?
Thoughts? I'm beaming because I loved it so much.
Yeah?
Oh my god, it had so many things that I loved in it, and I'm not going to talk about it until Spoiler Street, like other movies that it's like pays homage to that I love. But what I would say
I
is,
think we'll keep the plot details very light here.
Yeah, we'll keep it for Spoiler Street because it's not the
better
kind of movie.
Better to go into this fresh.
Better to
don't
go
even
in
watch
cold.
the trailer.
Florence Pugh's obviously incredible. We knew that already.
Yeah.
Olivia Wilde. It's really interesting to watch her with the bigger budget because obviously Booksmart was like a low budget movie, and I think she really pulls it off. I think she's an amazing director. I think her use of sound and music is extremely interesting. And
there's some great songs in
there's
this
some
movie.
great visual cuts and
Yeah.
use of objects and some really beautiful kind of big vista shots, and I felt very tense a lot of the time. I found Harry Styles to be totally grand, decent, fine. He's not the star and he doesn't feel like the star.
Same.
I have no problem with him in it, and I'm interested to watch him.
I actually thought his hair did better acting than he did. His hair looked fantastic.
He's by no means a bad actor though.
No, he's fine,
yeah.
but unfortunately he's acting against Florence Pugh.
Exactly. But also he's just too famous, so it's kind of hard to watch him. But also Olivia Wilde's in this, and she's great. I love her as an actress. So all round, I really enjoyed how atmospheric it was. It felt like a bit Hitchcockian sometimes in that kind of like tension. And I think at the end, I was fully into it at the end, and I could sense a moment where like some people in our audience started laughing and like they weren't with it, but I was with it, and I think it's like the most interesting thing I've seen in the cinema in a long time, obviously aside from Blackbird.
All that by this point onwards, post episode 250 of the Cinemile, we will judge all films by the standard of Blackbird.
Do you know the other
Since
film
Michael
that I
Flatley
found?
re-evaluated cinema as a format?
Another film that I found as experimental and interesting is this movie.
Is Michael Flatley's Blackbird?
No, was what's the name of the new Jordan Peele movie?
Nope.
Nope, yeah.
Yeah.
To me, this and Nope
wow.
fit very well together as two very interesting films.
I don't think this is up to that standard. I don't think it's anywhere near what Jordan Peele is doing. If anything, I found Laura, let me say first off, I think I really enjoyed this movie. I did. I had a really good time. I love a mystery box. I spent a lot of time trying to unpick what was happening.
Same.
And I find that process very enjoyable, and Florence Pugh as our main character, I was very highly invested in, and I think she's fantastic.
And I certainly never guessed the ending.
I enjoyed all the trimmings, the costumes, the soundtrack. It's a Chris Pine is doing a lot. Is very fun in this.
I forgot to mention him. He is so good.
So yeah, I had a really good time. However,
having seen this movie,
sorry,
what's your verdict? Did
That's
Harry
what I'm-
Styles spit on his lap or not?
Oh, I mean, I like the way you say having seen this movie, as if this movie gives us a clue into whether or not that happened. And yes, no, I'm glad to say the movie does resolve that at the end. It's all about the spit. I don't know. It certainly looks like it in the clip, but who knows? It could just be. Anyway, so however, I got to say, these kind of mystery box movies with a sort of a thriller plot, they kind of live or die by the third act and the ending, I think, right?
Yeah.
And for me, didn't quite land. Okay, and I think you nailed it there where you said these kind of things. You either you go with it or you don't.
Yeah, I was like, yes! And next to me, people were laughing.
Probably with the half of the audience that was like, okay. Because for me, it kind of became less than the sum of its parts, and we can get into that in spoilers. But I thought it was totally fine. But for me, it does not. I think with the work of Jordan Peele, I walked out of Nope being like, whoa, what does it mean? It could mean this, and there's so much like, there's so many like observations and societal implications. Whereas we'll talk about this in spoilers, but I kind of feel like the thing that this movie's trying to say is just one thing, and it's kind of obvious, which is fine. I mean, it's a fine, important commentary on society.
I take huge issue.
Oh, this is going to be good.
This
is going to be good.
With you reducing the message of this film down to that.
Okay, well, will we get to Spoiler Street then and get into it? Because it sounds like this is going to be a contentious one.
Enraged me.
Oh wow! Okay.
Is that all we want to say before we get to spoilers? Do we recommend?
I would recommend it.
You haven't seen it?
Yes, I would. I thought Olivia Wilde is a great director. I thought some really great performances.
I think it's really interesting to compare this to Booksmart because they're
very different. Yeah,
they're so different.
There's no
really
comedy in this.
Whereas with only because we're talking about Jordan Peele because he's only directed 2 movies where she's directed 2, so it's kind of interesting to compare. His first 2 movies, I think was very evidently by the same director. Don't know that I would have guessed these were by the same director, which is just interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting, and I love that she chose. I love that her now 2 feature films are like written by women, directed by women, starring women, female-centered stories. There's just not enough of them out there. As silly as that might sound to you, Dave.
Oh, come on, sorry, I'm not saying that. That's a bit reductive now. I'm not saying that's silly. I'm judging this movie on its merits alone. Not that I think it's brilliant to have a female directed and written movie with a female star, and the movie's about the female experience.
Yeah.
You're already on the defensive now. Wow. Okay, let's get into it. But before we get into spoilers, I would like to do a quick shout out to some of our new patrons over at patreon.com/theCinemile who are supporting us a show.
Thank you so
at
much.
£2 or £3 a month. Thank you. Or there's an equivalent euro amount. Still in pounds. So thank you. A big thank you to new patrons Andy Armstrong, Emma McCarthy, Tobias Hansen, Ben Suri, Johan Svensson, Chris Downey, and Ganesh Suntharilagan. So thank you to all of you new patrons and to all of our existing patrons. We are having an absolute blast over there doing all of monthly retro movies.
We do like 3 episodes a week in our Patreon now.
Yes, well we do. We're doing weekly episodes of Rings of Power of the Lord of the Rings show and House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones show. It's just basically the fantasy week over there, isn't it? And we are also doing monthly retro movie reviews. So we've just done Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and you get to pick our next one. So head over there if you're watching Rings of Power or House of the Dragon, and we're also doing general TV stuff like She-Hulk and loads of other stuff. So
yes, loads going on.
See you over there, patreon.com/thecinema.
Anyway, we've just walked onto Spoiler Street, Dave.
Oh, what a coincidence. So full spoilers now. You have been warned because I think this movie's all about the plot.
It is all about the plot. And before we get to the end of the film, how did you feel the film addressed? One thing I thought was interesting was at the very beginning we're obviously presented with this so-called idyllic kind of 50s style community, right?
Yes.
And so very early on it's I loved how this was shot, how it's all synced, that in the morning the women make the men their breakfast. It's always the bacon, the eggs, the coffee. And I was like, how do they eat bacon and eggs every morning and look so healthy? I got my answer later. And I love that all the wives come out at the same time and the men all reverse and perfect sync and pulled out. I loved symmetry. All that stuff.
And there's
it's
a lot
so
of
Truman Show.
There's a lot of correlation with the the ballet and the mantra that's getting repeated about symmetry.
I love that synchronized dancing. So it's very Truman Show, and it's also very The Matrix. And I just love those as 2 reference points. And they're really, really male films. And I've never seen a film like this, but this female focus, except at the very end, what it then also nodded to, which is a female focus, is very much Thelma and Louise at the end. Fucking love that.
Oh, yeah. You're
so
right.
I think they're the references I was getting from it anyway. And so I loved how they set all the world up. And then it obviously starts unraveling fairly quickly. My only issue with the plot and the pacing actually was felt like it unraveled a little bit too quickly.
Do you think so? Because I felt like in the middle it was going a bit too slow. I was thinking it was dragging its heels a little bit.
I think she should have dragged out the perfection a little bit more, and then kind of quickly more went into the descent. But what I found really interesting was it's so interesting that of course it was a male fantasy. I found that fascinating because I was like, why? I was like, how is this supposed to be her perfect life? All she does is cook for her husband, get dressed, clean the house, have sex with him every day, whether she wants to or not. It felt weird, and I think it's so interesting that it all... Now, spoilers, turn off. If you're still listening and you haven't seen it, because it's really worth watching. It's all like an incel fever dream.
Yeah,
mixed
exactly.
with MAGA.
Yeah.
And I found that to be so clever.
Yeah, it's
so fucking clever.
It's a very conservative view of
Make America great again.
The man is the provider and the woman cleans the house, and
then that he did it all without her consent.
But
and she's actually a doctor, and he was like, I haven't cooked for myself. I've been sitting at home hungry all evening.
You didn't text me back to say what you wanted.
So right before that happened, and it showed us that she was in a simulation.
Yeah.
I thought that should have been the ending, right? But then when they actually showed us all that, I thought, boy, that's fascinating. That's actually in this movie so suave and handsome, and then I love that they showed that he's actually this fucking creep.
I gotta say,
I was not expecting
the
that.
physical transformation of Harry Styles between incel Harry Styles and suave, sexy Harry Styles was quite something. And again, I think that was his hair doing most of the acting.
And his beard. He looked like...
He looked
The incel
awful.
Harry Styles looks like the older brother Jonathan in Stranger Things.
Yes, he did.
To the point for a minute I thought it was actually that actor.
I'm interested, what did you think was happening throughout the movie? Well, what were your theories that were going through your head?
They were in a simulation. I thought that they had voluntarily entered this society and maybe taken some drugs or something. I actually never crossed my mind that it was a simulation.
I had
two.
I didn't think it was a virtual simulation. No, and I think that idea is a bit meh. The 2 main theories I had running throughout the movie were either it is set in the modern world and they're either prisoners out in the desert, or it's part of an experiment.
Same, yeah, I thought that.
So I think that wasn't a big surprise to me that it was the modern world. But my other one was post-apocalyptic society, which I think is a bit like a show that we watched that I won't reference, which is a similar mystery box. You know what I mean? Like the world, the world has fallen.
I don't know what show you're referencing.
The world has fallen to ruin, and they are trying to create a new world order here. You know, something in the middle there.
Right. Yeah.
But so I think for me it was just like when the excitement of this kind of movie or premise is always in the what's going on. It's in the mystery, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, the ultimate result of it's this always tends to be a little unsatisfying.
Would you have rather they left it ambiguous then, because of what you're saying about Nope?
No.
Because there was a moment where it could have been ambiguous, but I think if it was ambiguous, then we wouldn't have gotten the point of the movie, which is that this is a male, incel, patriarchal fever dream of putting women in their box and controlling them.
No, I'm not saying... I actually don't think that Nope was that ambiguous at all. I think Nope was quite clear with what it was doing. I think what Nope is not clear with is what that could all... I'm not going to spoil it, but I think Nope... What Nope presents is a lot of imagery that is kind of symbolic of various different things and can be... I was really thinking about Nope for a long time afterwards. The message of this, I think, was just so on the nose. And I'm not... That's not to say I'm not criticizing it as a valid and relevant message for today's world. I'm just saying there's not much more to it. So when it became, it's a virtual reality and she's a prisoner, firstly, that's a horrific thing.
That was horrific.
Just the picture of her on the bed and then him like watering her mouth and like he has to maintain her body, which is
so freaky.
Awful stuff. But that it's like so that's what's happening in the world, and it's representative of an incel patriarchal view of women in which they're imprisoned. I'm just like, oh, okay.
But
do you know what I mean?
But do you not know what?
It's not leaving me. I'm not coming away from that week thinking, wow, or it's really making me think.
Because I'm thinking, fuck, there's men out there who'd love to do this. But then what I thought was really interesting and again unexpected at the end was that but you know everything already. Like, why do you watch film? Olivia Wilde's character, who
did you just admit I know everything?
No, I'm just saying, why would you say I know that already as a criticism of a theme? But with Olivia Wilde's character, what I found really interesting is that she did know and was complicit because she wanted to live in a simulation.
Yeah.
Because she'd lost her children. And it made me think, well, actually, everyone in this compound, right, has a different story. So we don't know what's going on in any of their relationships, why they're here. We just know what's going on with Harry Styles and Florence Pugh.
I thought that was an interesting breadcrumb, all right. However, the movie reveals its premise and then kind of doesn't really resolve any of the threads beyond that. It gives you another little breadcrumb with Olivia Wilde. Then suddenly Gemma Chan kills Chris Pine and says, it's my turn now. That didn't make sense.
I think it's because she knew that Chris Pine blew it by goading Florence Pugh at the dinner party. I think she knew what he'd done.
So do you think she is complicit in the virtual reality thing, or what?
I think she definitely knew, 100%. Yeah, she definitely knew.
Seemed like it.
Yeah.
But then I don't know. But
Although
okay.
And then the bit that I didn't get on the thread point is at the end when Florence Pugh's like running out, which I love, and everyone's trying to chase her. That was like the whole Thelma and Louise bit that I love. But when the neighbours' wives kind of let go of their husbands' hands and started looking at her, I didn't quite understand why they were pulling away from their husbands.
I think there was something in the light bulbs outside their houses were exploding, almost as if Florence Pugh was making that happen. I think that was a little unclear, though.
The simulation was like breaking.
Yeah, I think that was the implication.
It's interesting because it appears to be like, sorry, Mark Zuckerberg, but this is the metaverse. They're like true avatars who are like truly experiencing like sex and stuff. It also makes more sense that Olivia Wilde was always drinking, because even in that simulation they appear to get drunk. And Olivia Wilde's character is obviously like deeply grieving and like knows she's living this fake life but wants to be around her fake children. And she is like drunk all the time, and I thought that actually made more sense then, because we saw her drinking like first thing in the morning every morning.
What was interesting though in that idea is that Olivia Wilde doesn't seem to want to spend much time with her children. You know, they almost seemed like an inconvenience to her in the virtual reality, or maybe it's because she knew that it was all fake.
Well,
and part of her was unable to engage with that.
It must be hard to bond with your simulated fake avatar children. But also in the
but there was something quite tragic
this,
about it.
It's really tragic, and in the constraints of the simulation, everyone is sending their kids to school and stuff, and it's also like 50s style parenting, which is very hands off.
I do think it does have something interesting to say about the sort of intoxicated. How intoxicating nostalgia can be.
This is what
and
MAGA
this
is.
idea of this perfect world, that does not exist.
Back in the 50s, whenever they're harking back to, you know, everyone had a place, and men went off to work, and women were in the home, and the women were really happy. It's like, mate, they weren't happy. Actually.
And it's not just America that is subject to this. I've heard members of my own family say things like, you know, oh, things used to be a lot simpler, right? Didn't they used to be a lot simpler? And it's like, yeah, things were simpler for you, the white person who was middle class. It's just like the world is changing because it's not owned by us anymore. And I think I think a change is threatening to
well, it's also very
most
interesting
people
to
are
that point.
Fearful. But yeah, you're right. The perfect world in the past never existed.
Exactly.
But
it's interesting to someone like Harry Styles' character in the movie, who I guess probably is an engineer, and that's why they want him on the project. But he like is unemployed, and he's like, how can I provide for you? And Florence Pugh's like, don't worry about it, mate, I'm a doctor, I'll just pick up a few extra shifts. So he's like very emasculated, as the incels would be, and he's like trying to have sex with her, and she's like, oh, I've just come out of a 30-hour shift.
I think
that stuff was all fascinating to me. His motivations, I love to see that.
I just felt like as soon as we got that, there was like no nuance to it. Do you know what I mean? Like he became a sort of a two-dimensional character. But I guess
But
it was just that Harry Styles wasn't selling it that well.
No, but I think the whole point is he actually is really vapid, and I think it's really hard to tell because it's Harry Styles and not a different actor, but I feel like if Shia LaBeouf had done it, he would have had to be similarly vapid, because ultimately he's just this guy who knows he's living in a simulation and imprisoning his girlfriend.
I think I probably could have it would have been an easier buy for me to look at Shia LaBeouf and think right-wing online conspiracy nut.
What do you think about Harry Styles with this marionette dancing? That was wild.
I thought that was really interesting.
Dark,
really interesting, because there is some interesting stuff in this when you start to dig into it, like the every time she's hoovering their living room, there's like an animation of an old classic style cartoon of like marionette puppets dancing, and that
only
dance is what he's doing later on,
and he's doing it like with abandon.
I gotta say though, he's a great dancer, and it was freaky, and I think the soundtrack to this, while not an entirely original thing, is very effective. That sort of female creepy vocal of
the soundtrack was class. And I also love though, like, this film's directed by a female director and Florence Pugh, the star, right? And right, to reiterate for this podcast, it's extremely rare to have a female director. And I think the inclination of many a director would have been, it's Harry Styles, the biggest pop star in the world, he's doing this freaky marionette scene that he's probably practiced for a month to do, but it just kept cutting to Florence Pugh. It was still her scene.
Yeah.
And I love to see that. I love to see that throughout the entire movie she was always the star, and whatever is going on with like all the gossip around her and Olivia Wilde's relationship or whatever, I think it's extremely evident that this movie is taking great care to frame her as the star. She is the star. This is like her star vehicle, and I just don't think it's not Harry Styles, and I think that's like really obvious to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
right, will you leave it there?
Is that it?
I mean, I have nothing else to say to you.
No, I guess not. Other than at the end when she was like in the car and all those men. Jonah from Veep.
Yeah,
we love him.
I thought he was miscast, if I'm honest.
Really?
Yeah,
I bought him because
two comedy actors
they're all
here.
The creepy guys. He's creepy.
Yeah, but he's too much of a comedy actor. And Nick Kroll, who's also a comedy actor, is in this. He wasn't too jarring for me. I just don't think Jonah is creepy enough. And that scene at the end where he was chasing her, saying, "Don't let her get away," in the car, was, I don't know, very hammy. And he's not threatening to me. He's too much of a goofball.
Well, he's not threatening, but he's like, it's funny that they mentioned one of the other guys as a goober. It's like, they're all goobers. They're like locking their women into like an artificial
I guess that's part of the point. Yeah. He is the kind of guy who he doesn't like look like the kind of guy who would lock a woman in her room.
I think he deliberately left the thing out for her to see her own name in the file, or her friend's name, or whatever that was, and then deliberately left the briefcase in the room for her to read, because Chris Pine wanted like a worthy adversary, and he wanted her to have some information to come at him with.
Why do you think that was? I think it was just because he's bored in this virtual reality, right?
I think he's bored, yeah. He's like, I've been waiting for someone to come along and challenge me, basically. Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
It is really twisted. He was fantastic in this.
He was so good. And you know the
Great
scene
villain.
at the dinner table when he said afterwards that was really disappointing, I thought you could do better. I felt that as a viewer. I was like, that was really disappointing. She didn't build up her ammunition enough before she let loose at the table.
But that's probably all. She's quite powerless in there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure what else she could have done, and I thought that was somewhat realistic.
I think it's interesting that Olivia Wilde's character knew what was going on the whole time and knew that she was right, and just didn't come to the dinner party. She was like, I want no part in this. Yeah. She's like, I know what's happening. But anyway, I really love that. I thought the end of it was so fun, and I love at the very end we hear an inhale when it goes dark. We just hear her like, so we presume she's okay. She's out of the simulation, lying next to Harry Styles' dead body.
How was he feeding her? Through a tube?
I guess, there was.
But like, don't you need like sunlight and? But would you have muscle atrophy? She'd have all atrophy and like bed sores and all this kind of stuff. Oh, she'd be waking up in a right state.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing to her, to be honest. Also, I don't understand. I actually, to this moment now that we're talking about it, what were they actually doing? Where was he going every day?
So he would go back into the real world. We got a quick glimpse of him going out he'd earn a minimum wage just to sustain them and get food.
Is that what it was? So he wasn't actually working for Chris Pine?
No, he exits the program every day. Goes out, earns enough.
I thought in the real world he was working for Chris Pine.
No, I don't think so. No, there is no. Like, it's just all a so fake.
They just all go off in their blaze of glory in incredible cars.
That's what That's what he's saying at the end. I'm doing this for you. Like, he thought he was being a good provider, giving her a perfect world.
Yeah,
that's
so
the
dark.
insanity of it all.
That was so dark.
And he was kind of resentful because he couldn't spend all day in here. He had to go out to the real world.
Yeah, and she's like, I usually go to a shopping mall all day, like, and go swimming. Okay,
anyway, we'll leave it there.
Right.
Thanks for listening. Keen to hear what other people think. What do you think of it?
Let us know.
Which half of the audience are you in?
And head over to the Cinemile on Twitter or Instagram to follow us and drop us a message and let us know what you thought of the movie. And head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify to subscribe and rate us. We greatly appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
And I'm not crazy.
Our life together. We could lose this.
I don't trust it. And I don't want to be here anymore.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What would you say if I told you there's a book that can teach you how to win The Bachelor?
What would you say if I told you producers caught multiple finalists reading that book in this season that's currently airing?
What would you say if I told you the producers don't want anyone to know that their show has been compromised?
How do we know all this? We wrote that book.
I'm Lizzie Pace.
And I'm Chad Kulchin.
We're the authors of How to Win the Bachelor and the hosts of the Game of Roses podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we break down all the biggest plays, errors, and MVPs in the game of reality television.
Listen to Game of Roses wherever you get your podcasts and go to howtowinthebachelor.com to get our book.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.